Multi-hazards, all about protecting communities.
Hi everyone. Again, we're here for Multi-Hazards, the podcast, where we take a deep dive into issues such as emergency management, climate change adaptation, security, etc. Ultimately, it's about protecting communities. So, welcome again. I'm the host, Vin Nelson, and on to today's topic. We are privileged to have Dr. Edris Alam, my first guest, working outside of North America. Currently, Dr. Edris Alam is working in the United Arab Emirates, where he's interviewing from. His specialties are disaster risk reduction, DRR, and climate change adaptation, CCA. Prior to this, he was the associate professor and chair of the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies at the Chittagong University, CU, Bangladesh. Dr. Alam has been active in disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation research since 2000. Dr. Alam studied and worked at universities in Bangladesh, the UK, and Australia. His Master's of Science thesis entitled Post-Tropical Cyclone Disaster Management in the Department of Geography and Environment, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, was where he started. He has another specialized master's degree in disaster management and sustainable development from the Northumbria University, UK. Additionally, Professor Alam received his PhD in disaster risk reduction in Bangladesh from the University of New South Wales, UNSW, Australia. Dr. Alam is an honorary chief executive of Disaster Action and Development Organization, DADO. Professor Alam succeeded securing research funding from governmental organizations, GEOs, NGOs, INGOs, and universities in Bangladesh, Australia, and United Kingdom. He has worked as a consultant with NGOs, the government of Bangladesh, INGOs, and UN, United Nations, agencies. He has a significant track record of high-quality research outputs by publishing in the science of natural hazards, vulnerability, and disaster management, publishing 20-plus research papers in major international journals such as Disasters, Earth Science Reviews, Natural Hazards, Progress in Disaster Science, and International Journal of Climatology. In 2018, Professor Alam wrote and published a book entitled Coping and Adaptation: Coastal Communities with Disasters. His Google Scholar page has stated that Dr. Alam has had extensive citations of his work worldwide. Over the last 19 years, Professor Alam has been working on climatic hazards, early warning, disaster risk reduction, resilient livelihoods, and climate change adaptation. His expertise is specifically in theoretical and behavioral approaches to disaster risk reduction and sustainable development. He gained this by working with local communities, the government of Bangladesh, NGOs and UN agencies, and delivering teaching and conducting academic research on responses to climate and disaster management. Whilst working as a lead international consultant on climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction cluster of the UNDP country program 2017 to 2020 evaluation in Bangladesh, Professor Alam identified appalling strategic gap in program document development and implementation of agendas on climate change and disaster risk reduction. Advocating for the mainstreaming of environment, climate, and disaster risk reduction considerations throughout all sectors is the utmost thrust of his work. So it's my custom here, as I have been telling you, at the Multi-Hazard Podcast, because of deep respect for the First Nations on whose land I podcast here in the suburbs of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, I would like to say a territorial acknowledgement. The text is from a neighboring Kwantlen Polytechnic University, or KPU. Here it is. We work, study, and live in a region south of the Fraser River, which overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral lands of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, Katzie, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, Kikite, and Coquitlam peoples. These are the names of various First Nations groups around me here in Greater Vancouver, here on the west coast of Canada. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. All right. Welcome to our show, Dr. Edris Alam. So as I've seen from doing some online search about you, you've been very busy over the last few years. There's so many peer-reviewed papers you've written and even some books. And to me, it appears that protecting communities through disaster risk reduction, DRR, and climate change adaptation, CCA, is a passion. It's like a force that's driving you over all these years. Now, this is not your typical career trajectory that most people have. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, like, how you got into this field of disaster risk reduction.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Bin. I came to work in the discipline of disaster and emergency management by choice and real passion with lifelong experience on the discipline. I didn't come here for the career or job purposes. As you may know, tropical cyclone or hurricane is the most damaging hazards event in Bangladesh. In the recent history, in 1970, approximately 500,000 people killed by hurricane, just a year before the independence of Bangladesh. I am from an island called Sundip Island, which is located up the Bay of Bengal, a harbor of tropical cyclones. You might heard about Cyclone Gorky 1991, so nearly 29 years back, that killed approximately 147,000 people in Bangladesh, including over 10,000 people from my island, the Sundip Island. I was at that time 14 years old, living in the island, and was a schoolboy, and directly experienced the severity of hurricane and the devastation caused by it in our area and adjoining areas. Following the day of 29th April cyclone in 1991, I went further to the coast, to the sea, to see the severity of the devastation and participated in rescue and post-disaster reconstruction operations as a schoolboy. That hurricane marked my life and instigated to study disasters and its varying consequences on different walks of life. After I finished my higher secondary schooling, after I finished 12 years of schooling, when I was choosing my undergraduate degree, I selected geography and environment as a discipline at the University of Dhaka for my studies. Eventually, while studying my master's degree at the University of Dhaka, Bangladesh, I chose a thesis options and conducted a dissertation on post-disaster living experience of the island communities during April 1991 cyclone. So that's my professional starting. Then I got a job, luckily, just after finishing my graduation at a second largest public university in Bangladesh called University of Chittagong as a lecturer. So that's how now in 2003 I started as a lecturer at the university. So since then I am active in the academia and working different contexts in Bangladesh, Australia, United Kingdom, and different South Asian countries. Thank you.
Right. Now, this sounds like the case where some people say it's not you choosing the career, it's the career choosing you. So sounds like that's the case here. So now,
Yes.
yeah, where I'm from, Canadians, like I think I've met maybe a couple immigrants from Bangladesh, and then we have like what do we call it? Real Canadian Superstore. It's this big chain across Canada, and then look at a lot of clothing. You flip the tag in the back, it says made in Bangladesh. So I was looking online. I saw that because of COVID-19 pandemic, the workers of Bangladesh were really hard hit. And the other time we hear about Bangladesh is maybe only when there's a cyclone or some other geohazard that's hitting Bangladesh. So people here, it's like we don't know too much. So I'm very curious to learn more. Today I spent a little bit of time watching some YouTube videos on disaster risk reduction in Bangladesh. But I wonder, what is the particular context there in Bangladesh, and could you tell me about the country?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bean. Again, you are right. In what Bangladesh had a history of all types of hazard experience, except volcanoes. So any kind of disaster hazard you can imagine, Bangladeshi has the experience of facing that things. But we had a mud volcano mark in some areas, possibly induced by the 1762, but not the direct volcano eruption. No volcanic eruption sites in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
So Bangladesh learned how to live with cyclone and flood due to their living experience with this type of disaster over centuries. We face 3 to 4 severe cyclones every year, with a damaging cyclone in 10 years interval. So every year we face 3-4 cyclones severity, but the one is a great cyclone or super hurricane stage cyclone 10 years after we face. Similarly, about 30% of the land of Bangladesh, so say in a country, 30% of the country always submerged during the rainfall season, say monsoon season. Bangladeshi 30% usually gone to the underwater. Mm-hmm. And this is good for our agricultural productivity. We expect this kind of water. But sometimes this water gone over 45% land. So then we call flooding and stay 10 to 15 days in some areas. So that's devastating for us. You know, Bangladesh is a lower middle economy and is waiting to be graduated as a middle income country in 2021. Our revenues come from garments industries and remittance coming from expatriate Bangladeshis. So 2 pillars of the Bangladeshi economy at the moment. The revenue coming from the, as you said, when you go to the supermarket in Canada, US, Europe, when I've been in Australia a long time, in Australia, the garments coming from Bangladesh. So that's the one. The second is, you see all over the world, if you go, you see some Bangladeshi working. They have all supported family people in Bangladesh. They send money. So maybe European coming from Italy to coming to the Canada, Australia, they're not sending back money home. But Bangladesh is going overseas. The only purpose to send some money for the family, for the parents, for the sister, for the other relatives, supporting them. So
right.
As the Bangladeshis, they are highly courageous and hardworking and had potential to develop based on its huge human resources, who is yet to be skilled and developed. So once population was thought as a burden, but now its population is more resources. But these resources, if you see Bangladeshi in different world working as a low income, not class actually job, as an income, low income job, those down under in any way. So we had to have way to skill the people to get it from poverty and to get more better earning in Bangladesh and overseas. Thank you.
Right. I was looking online today and there's some web pages and they were saying that in the whole world, Bangladesh is probably one of the top countries for being disaster prone. And you've already described some of the risks and hazards that Bangladeshis face, but I'm wondering if you could just give us a little bit more of a broad picture of what are the risks that Bangladesh faces.
Yes, as I said, except volcanoes, Bangladesh experienced all types of disaster. Our resilience is based on living experience with tropical cyclone and flooding disaster. So Bangladeshis learn how to live with this over centuries. We got the knowledge from the first generations, and since born with having seen this kind of disaster, we take it normal. You heard about resilience of Bangladeshi to disaster because our media and government propagated this to show their success in disaster risk management. I just repeat again, resilience of Bangladeshis or success of Bangladeshis in disaster management has been much propagated through our
Right.
media and through our government channels to international community. Similarly, the NGOs received international funding that had to show their success, repeating the stories of people living experience with tropical cyclone and flooding disasters. Similarly, NGOs receive money from donor agencies. So after the finishing 2 year, 3 years projects, they have to show, okay, we have done 50 training, we get the 1,000 people learn how to do these things, how to prepare for the flood, how to do the respond to the warning of cyclone, this kind of thing. So they have to make the documentary, and this kind of things gone always to the media. However, our residential, commercial, and industrial buildings are fragile conditions. For example, a building of ready-made garment industry known as Rana Plaza was collapsed in 2013, which killed over 1,000 people in residing at that building, residing and working in that building. What about earthquake preparedness and resilience of our building to earthquake hazards that could occur within Bangladesh from Bangladeshi and adjacent Gauki and Assam fault sources? What about road accident in Bangladesh? How much we progress to reduce accidents number and fatalities? According to the police, at least 4,138 people were killed and 4,400 injured in 4,000 accidents in 2019, which is a rise of 57% fatalities from previous year. Based on frequency and intensity of hazard and fatalities, my concern for Bangladesh, every year you see the news headings of industrial and fire accidents in Bangladesh is rising because we're not prepared. It's our populated country, and industrial building and large commercial building is not prepared enough for the fire hazards. So again, you see also every year chemical or toxic accidents that are very frequent in Bangladesh. We didn't do much on these things. Bangladeshi people, if you ask them, any building has you see sometimes same building, people do the chemical industries and residential living as well. So a residential building using same way as a manufacturing chemical industries. So every 1-2 years after we see the great accidents in that building. Bangladesh can manage those disasters that they frequently face, as I said, the flood and cyclone. The communities. So Bangladesh stories of success, resilience is not something done only by the government or any NGOs, you and me. It's the Bangladeshi communities, they're used to living this. It's a living experience, resilience to the flood and cyclone. But if you think about long interval disasters, so those say earthquake in Bangladesh, we face little bit 5 intensity earthquake every year, 2, 3 or more. But if you say 7 or more, does the Bangladesh have any history of earthquake? Many people would say no, Bangladesh didn't see any big earthquake recently. So our resilience, our preparedness based on those only the disaster we face frequently. But earthquake is a interval of as a large scale, maybe 100 years. So interval means from one earthquake to another great earthquake from the same pole could be 200 years, could be 300 years. So do we not take the preparation for the earthquake?
Mm-hmm.
So that's our lacking. Yeah. So is the government is not doing anything? Yeah, they're doing. So if they don't see the disaster devastation, the preparedness and activities is very slow. That's my concern. So think about same as the pandemic COVID-19. So
Right.
COVID-19 kind of disaster pandemic has a history of occurrence 100 years. So people forget about these things, Then again, 100 years after it comes. It's a time frame. It's not absolutely right, but it's something usually you can see the media people saying. So for Bangladesh earthquake management, they're trying to do something, but it's a very limited scale. Our building structure is fragile. Our building code is not implemented. So the country can learn from the China. China has made significant progress in the earthquake risk management, including the emergency medicine as well. I've been in the Sichuan University with the Institute of Disaster Management and Reconstruction. So they make a big university for earthquake risk management following the Sichuan 2008 earthquake. So they have a live museum of earthquake. So all the earthquake areas, maybe it's around say I would say 10 square kilometer or more. The areas they preserved as a museum. So building devastation, landmark of the devastations, everything you can go, you can see there. And they have a university dedicated to make the earthquake resilience building, earthquake resilience preparation, complete preparation of the development activities based on the earthquake. And they have the very specific emergency management procedure in that area. Bangladesh can learn from that kind of experience. As well, as I said, emergency medical response, Bangladesh is very poor. For any emergency medical response, you do not have much preparation. You don't have the logistic as well. First thing is concept. If you don't have the concept of the emergency medicine implementation, how can you do that? Again, public health emergency management, such as COVID-19 risk management, is tremendously bad. I will give this example when you ask me exactly about the COVID-19. Again, landslide risk management. If I say landslide risk management, Bangladesh has recent years has experienced landslide. So whatever coming new thing, they're not handling. They cannot handle this. The death and losses is higher. But those only they have the experience, say cyclone and flood, that community has already living experience. They're doing good there. So resilience in a term is very much, as I said, propagated, sold by the Bangladeshi government and media and development partners. Because they have the
So parts of the disaster risk management field in Bangladesh, they are evolving. And I know that over the years, Dr. Alam, you've had some input into the process. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, thank you. Now you actually asked me a very academic questions. So a disaster risk management approach is very scientific and methodological questions. You are asking very much in a right direction. If I answer this from Bangladeshi government, say, I can answer these things two ways. One thing from the what government selling these things and what is the reality. So let's start not making government frustrated. What the government website says, such as the Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief, Disaster Management Department website and approaches. They say the country has developed much proactive risk management, prevention culture through the work implemented by the Comprehensive Disaster Management Program led jointly by government and UNDP Bangladesh since 2005. This means that before the disaster management was based on the post-disaster relief and rehabilitation activities. But now they have been progressing this toward more proactive, say progressive preventive preparedness and mitigation activities. So they not only thinking for the responding to the disaster after its occurrence. They're now thinking more preparedness before its occurrence. So that's they try to say it, and that's they doing. In the last 20 years, there is much progress in this regard. However, my personal judgment and evaluation of these activities are still surrounding few known and frequent hazards. So this is, as I said, always cyclone and flood. So if Bangladesh has a too much experience with the hazard management, why they didn't do good in COVID-19 risk management? Why COVID-19 risk management kind of pandemic risk management kind of things is not implemented in their disaster management system? So that's my concern. So as I said before, Bangladesh's industrial and fire accidents is rising. They still did good. Chemical and toxic management, no good. And earthquake risk management. So as I say, maybe they have to wait for a earthquake to be occurred in adjacent area, and Bangladesh has to be died. Building has to collapse. 100,000 people has to die. Then they have learned about these things as well, like living experience with the disaster. So that's not a good thing. So they have to think about more forecasted, predicted hazards and work more proactively. So they have to have the incorporate emergency medicine response and the exercise things. One thing I would say, Bangladesh, if you go to any Bangladeshi building, they'll never show you how to evacuate, how to go to which side is that washroom, what is the fire evacuation, what is the emergency evacuation. They'll never tell you because they don't have that system in their official system. That's not the culture there. So they have to have this system implemented. Again, landslide risk management is still the elite people. It's not something landslide people is a very common disaster in Bangladesh. It's only Bangladesh has the few hilly districts. Example is southeastern side of Bangladesh, hilly areas, Rangamati, called Bandarban, Chittagong city. These are the landslide prone area. So in this overpopulated country, some elite group control the land. So they make cheap houses and give rental to the poor people. And some landless people, they manage to go to the deep forest and live there and cut the trees and so landslide occurs there. They are suffering. So elite people is managing this. But government in terms of the managing, in terms of post-disaster preparation is doing good. There are also some management for the landslide now, in normal time, preparedness, but they're not doing something very robust to make changes. So they're not stopping the people living inside the hills, inside the government owned land. It's not very unclear about the land management in some areas, how people get the right to have the big hill. As far I know, in many countries, hills are the property of the government. But in Bangladesh, it's same. But sometimes I see the private person own the hill and they make the houses there, this thing, that thing, causing the disaster in the area. So another thing is the COVID-19 risk management are tremendously bad. This kind of things they have to improve. Thank you.
Right. And if I may ask you just a little extension question here. Bangladesh has signed on to the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction's the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. It's 2015 to 2030. So they're a part of it.
Yes. Bangladesh is one of the very proactive country going and attending any kind of treaty. They go there, they sign. And because as a developing countries before, they used to receive the funding from the different countries. So they maintain this kind of international obligations. So the government is very smart doing these kind of things. And in terms of making some paper documents, they will sign and they make some paper documents for these things, showing they have implemented this thing, that thing. Yeah, in paper they implement, but in practice, if you see the output, it's not good.
Okay, well, at least it's a standard that they can try to get to. It's there. It's a framework. So, I know it's worldwide. Now, I've read on your LinkedIn profile that there's an organization, I believe, that you founded. It's called Disaster and Development Organization, DADO. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, like, what inspired you to establish or work with this organization, and what are your current activities?
Well, thank you very much. I see you have seen these things. Thank you. So as I said in the beginning of this interview, I have direct experience of hurricane in 1991 when I was a schoolboy, and I know what happened in pre, during, and post disaster period. So disaster has three phases: pre-phase, during phase, and post disaster phase. So I have the living experience with disaster in three different phases with the hurricane.
Right.
1991. So I know what is poor people life in Bangladesh, underlying causes of people's vulnerability of the poor people who are the victims of disasters in Bangladesh. I have living experience with them. Whilst visiting disaster-prone areas, I felt that there are tremendous gaps between communities' perception of risks, people's vulnerability, and institutional responses by government and NGOs in Bangladesh. So it's two sides. What community thinking? What's community's vulnerability? What are the problem community facing? What they expect from the government and NGOs, and what government is doing. So there is a gap. Also, I feel that I should go beyond academic approaches. So as a said, I began as a professor at the university, beginning as in my career. So I thought I should go beyond because as an academic person, I can only go and do some survey. So take the interview and maybe I can do some awareness things to the media, to the national TVs and writing some newspaper pieces. But I thought I should go beyond these things to help people. So having this in mind, I thought I should have something distinctive in my organization, in one organization, and I, based on my own living experience and academic knowledge, I gave a name, Disaster and Development Organization. I call this is DADU. DADU.
Okay.
So
Dadu.
Dadu means in Bengali is a grandpa or grandma, grandfather, grandma. So there is some things giving this name because Dadu, I mean, taking consideration of old people experience in disaster and development. So, so we should take the first generation's knowledge. So I established this in 2008, and since then, as a professional, I am living in different countries, but still the organization is working in Bangladesh. It is registered with the government of Bangladesh. So DADU targets research and development project interventions that meet at least three basic principles. So when we target any project, when we design any project, we think three basic principles has to be met. So first thing is benefiting poor, marginalized, and inclusiveness. So our activities must be targeting only poor, only the marginalized people, and should include all genders. And second thing, our activities must be reached to the hard to reach and inaccessible areas. Then one thing I would extend to you here a little bit, because government stay in the center of the administration. In anywhere in the world, they're always in the center of the administration. How far they go? Does they go all the reach to the very remote area where poor people live? So where the poor people live? Where the land price is less, where the agricultural activities. So does they go that area? Same the NGOs. They have office in the market area. Does they reach to the remote area? The very hard to reach area, maybe you don't have you can't use any vehicle there. No motorbike, no car, no bus, and you have to walk 3 days, 4 days. Does the NGOs and government official with a tie and should they go there? No. So we try to reach that level of the people, and also our criteria, the area must be a disaster affected area, must be a high disaster prone area. So now it's an independent, non-profit and specialized organization in Bangladesh. We trying to do something for the communities. recently we are trying to working on social distancing in Bangladesh during COVID-19. Our
Okay,
activities,
yeah.
social distancing. So you may think Bangladeshi people do not know the social distancing because the poor people they don't social distancing is a Western concept. It's not in the kind of the developing countries concept.
Right. Even though we never heard about it either. We were like, what is social distancing? So something new for us in March.
Yeah. So this kind of what the people are using. So we're trying to we working on social distancing in Shandip Island, and we giving the medical assistance by telephone because not many doctor in the high remote area. We give the number. This is something coming from my professional networks, from my friends and relatives, and my other networks. They giving their own doctor's number. They agreed to help the people, and community can call them if any symptom or any medical support they need, and emergency and basic food and medical supplies to the communities. So currently I am living in the Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. I'm sending money from here and also working with my friends and other organizations to reach the food and medical supply to the communities, helping poor people to gain its skill to earn living. So I actually have a office in Shandip Island where we are helping to people get the skill so they can start earning, and we helping the farmers in remote location for farming and to get price from farming production. So this is one of the things the farmer is not getting price from the production. So we trying to help their marketing strategies as well. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Now on the world map, Bangladesh, if we take a look, we can see it's one nation within South Asia, and then the Middle East, where you're working right now. The neighbors are there. So how would you compare disaster risk management in South Asia and the Middle East with that of Bangladesh?
Yeah, so South Asian countries, say Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka, have kind of similar historical background. The community is same and broadly similar disaster experience, but there are varying hazard intensity in different countries. Particularly Indian subcontinents, such as Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, has exactly the same history in last 250 years, governance and community, as well as they have the similar disaster risk management approaches. As stated before, most of the countries are implementing UN framework like EU framework from 2005 to 2015. We finished that one. Then currently we are implementing Sendai framework 2015 to 2030, and we are implementing proactive strategies. You asked me before about the UN framework and the Bangladesh weather signatory. Yes, so this countries as well, they always signing this agreement, and because if they sign this agreement, that is something good. They can have the money from the donor countries and UN agencies and INGOs, and there's lots of civil societies as well working in these countries. NGOs activities and civil societies are strong, particularly in Bangladesh. NGOs and the UN organization has much value in disaster management activities. I can mention about the UNDP Bangladesh and some other organization doing very good job. There are much difference between South Asian and Middle Eastern countries in terms of their history, background, governance, community, and disasters. From looking at the Canada, you can think about they may be close to, but no. They may be Asian country, but as a continent, but in terms of their government, history, community, and disaster is different. So remarkable difference in the government system, such as in contrast to the democratic government in South Asia, the government system in Middle East is monarchy. Most of them is kingdom, and community-based and NGOs are not much strong in Middle Eastern countries. So, say COVID-19 risk management. If I give you one example between Bangladesh and the United Arab Emirates.
Right.
So, say Emirates is a federal monarchy government, federal monarchy. So this means they have a federal government and they have a national government and they have a federal government as well. and it is monarchy. So here, you do not have the right to express much opinion. Media is very much controlled, and they can implement any laws overnight, and they can give you fine for anything. So since COVID-19, I see the government is very strong here. Coordination, cooperation, and media response are very smooth. So no rumor, no fake, not much fake news in the UAE media.
Okay.
But if you see, and as a expatriate person here, I didn't face any problem because business continuity in UAE was very nice. This is one of the rich countries in the world, very digital country, and government has much strong control on everything. But if you say democratic country in Bangladesh, so if you see the rumor of the COVID, misconceptions, fake news in Bangladeshi media, social media are very strong. So
Okay.
even in UAE, you cannot see any in social media is very controlled. You cannot see any misconception and rumor on the disease. But Bangladesh at the beginning has the lots of rumor and misconceptions. So Bangladesh is experiencing lots of problem for the COVID-19 because of the misconception. Media didn't play the consistent, coherent, and clear communication of the disease. They didn't do it, and social media make mess with the misinformations. And so, and government in the beginning, they have a thought that they wouldn't be affected by the COVID-19. It's the China disease or it's the overseas disease. Thank you.
Right. Right. So I was reading, you had a few bios online, and one of the bios I read from an institute said one of your goals, it says advocating for the mainstreaming of environment, climate change, and disaster risk reduction considerations throughout all sectors is the utmost thrust of his work. That was, I think, the last sentence. So I'm just wondering here, what does this mainstreaming mean? Like who's the audience and what do you believe should be done?
So mainstreaming is a concept, say, if you think about the disaster hazards. So disaster and hazard is as a government perspective, disaster is a small thing for government. They have many things to do. They have the politics, they have the economy, they have the community, they have the education, they have the health, they have the infrastructure development. So, and disaster is one thing they have to manage. So mainstreaming is a concept since 1960 promoted by the social scientists, saying if you think disaster as a separate thing to manage, the management would not be good. Management cannot bring the real differences, and it would be costly and unmanageable. So mainstreaming means you implement your disaster management program within current your other activities, your other government sectoral program. So your infrastructure development. If you're making a road, you considering the disaster, how much it could the flooding things happen here. So how much you have to raise the height of the thing. If you're making an embankment for the flood-prone area, same thing. You're projecting the development concept as well. So if you are making any investment on the energy, so you're thinking about the sustainable renewable energy and predicting for the projection in the future. And if you're making any building infrastructure, you're thinking more about the building code. You're thinking about the earthquake thing. You're thinking about the wind resistance within the system. So mainstreaming means all kind of disaster risk management has to go into the policy, regulations, and planning. So all development plan, when it has been made at the beginning, it has to consider the disaster risk management and climate change adaptation. And then, so countries' regulations, countries' policy, countries' project design, development plan, and implementation, and manpower, and government management structure has to keep all disaster risk reduction components included in their system. So you're not only managing a cyclone warning separately, you're not managing an evacuation separately. You're making this as a government system of that local government. So local governments in their management system incorporate it as a whole their management approach, and communities is involved with this process. All professional, all bodies of society involved with this process. This is more holistic approach of the community, government, and organizations, and all other business stakeholders as well. So this is something in mainstreaming.
Right. Now, I believe the sustainable development that was part of your bio, and I'm wondering how does that fit in with the disaster risk reduction and the climate change adaptation?
So yeah, that's things. One of the important aspect of the mainstreaming, even in disaster management current approaches. So what is the sustainable development mean? First thing we have to know. So sustainable development means, as a definition, that the development that meets the needs of present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This means whatever you're developing now, your state of development, this development level would continue for a long time, and it wouldn't compromise the future generations' ability to make their own needs. So you're not destroying, you're not doing in a way it's only last for one generation or two generations. You're doing in a way that all generations coming in the future can have this kind of level of the development. So that means that is sustainable. So same way, if we can incorporate disaster risk management and climate change adaptation concept within the sustainable development concept, integrate these things, synergies and relation, interconnection within these things, this could make more successful risk management for any country.
Okay, great. Now, skipping ahead here, I'm just wondering how agencies in developed nations and in developing nations, how can they better cooperate on hazard planning?
So, yeah, that's, I think most importantly, already many developed country and developing country are under the same umbrella of the United Nations, and particularly, already the Sendai framework is, and so the all countries are, even Japan. So many Sendai conference held in Japan. First, Japan and all rich people, rich countries and the poor countries are member on that. But beyond that, kind of treaty and United Nations framework. More importantly, we can do the student exchange, if I say you. So we got the undergraduate and postgraduate researchers in university. So university can start, say, some courses. Every student in Japan, they can spend 2 months, 1 month time in Bangladesh in a university. So that could be counted as a credit. Same thing, researcher. So researcher, say maybe COVID-19, you say now we can't do it, but they can do the distance learning. Still, they can do everything. They can attend the classes in Bangladesh as remotely. So same postgraduate researcher. I would say not only the postgraduate researcher. Now is doing mostly postgraduate research action. I would say more undergraduate as well. So people had from the beginning, they have the strong background. They have the international sense at the beginning. So secondly is faculty exchange. I know currently there is some faculty exchanges, but we should increase this more robust way. And professional exchange, public and private sector professionals exchange can be more effectively help to promote the planning in different countries. And finally, is important one is leadership, very important, political leadership particularly. So the different countries, first of all, and developing countries and developed countries, leader can exchange visit and views their experience on their point of view. If we make them involved with this process, it can have more impact. Without involving the political leadership, government structure, the impact would be less, because currently is more only on the university-wide exchanges. So if you see exchange program is only for the student and the faculty, not much for the political leadership. I trust we should also bring the leadership exchange as well. It's not exchange means only they has to visit all us. They can have different kind of interactions and through the through the digital technologies as well. Thank
Right. Now, Dr. Alam, you've already talked a lot about COVID-19, but I'm wondering what you think is the most urgent issue in disaster management that Bangladesh and the region, maybe the world, faces.
Yeah, so my understanding is actually planning to do a piece of research with the international, some other my colleague. So say we experienced with the SARS, MERS, plague before, but COVID-19 is new one from December. It started from December 10 to 12 in China, Yuan province. Everybody knows this now. I was thinking, why we got a cyclone warning, hurricane warning, flood warning. We're trying to predict earthquake warning. So why we do not predict pandemic warning? Why we not giving the disease outbreak warning? So I do not want to wait for the pandemic stage. So say for example, 25th January this year, United Nations World Health Organization declared coronavirus as a public health emergency concern. Public health emergency concern. Then after February and March 11, so how many days? Nearly 5, 10, 35 and 10 days. So nearly 45 days after, they declared it as a pandemic. Okay. So
Right.
25th January, they declared public health emergency. 45 days after, they declared it pandemic based on the circumstances, severity of the disease. But I would say when you see this outbreak is occurring in different kind of countries, if government in Bangladesh, in other countries, everywhere around the world, took the warning as a precautionary, like the hurricane signal, if they took the precautionary action, it would be managed more effectively. So in future, we have to think about the disease warning as well. And we have to think about if disease happen in China, China's route of the around the world. So the flight to the ships to the road. We have to think how this is coming to different countries. And we have to stop this from that stage. Secondly, currently, if you see we do not have enough epidemiological professions. Epidemiology is important, but this kind of discipline is not much got proper concentration, proper emphasis from different organizations, different countries. Same public health management professionals, not much. And as well, I would say vaccinations as well. So the world in this stage is still fighting to get a vaccine. We didn't able to successfully got the vaccine. So we have to, what about the medical sciences about the year developed? Thousands universities have the top ranked universities, they doing this thing, that thing. But in terms of the vaccinations, I think we are still not, for the any emerging diseases, we're not enough prepared for that as well. So we have to invest more time on the vaccinology or something like this. And as well, simulation and expertise of the proper program. So we're not doing too much drill of disaster risk management. We have to do more drill, more exercise for risk management as well. Thank you.
Right. Now, my last question for you, because I know you have somewhere you need to go. I would wonder, what would you advise, say, young people, or say if it's possible that a middle-aged person could switch to disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation? What kind of advice would you give them?
So that's a very practical and realistic questions. I would suggest to make social network is a very good thing. So everybody is using social network. I would say you use your social network effectively. You make some connections with the people who working in the discipline. See the giant people who is working, how they started. So at the beginning, if I give you my example, when I was reading, starting my career in the discipline in 17, 18 years back, I used to use my internet for browsing purposes, not chatting purposes. I didn't spend much time in chat room, but if you ask me about the universities around the world, even all Canadian major universities, I can give you the professional people name, department, and university's name. Same US, I can give you a Europe one, I can give you Australian one. So that took me there. Honestly speaking. So last 17 years, I'm living in, having a Bangladeshi background. I changed my passport to an Australian passport. I live in Australia, I live in UK, I live in Europe, I live in Asia. So the profession took me there. I never ever wanted to go many countries and live there. It's not something I like actually. Many people, my friends and family, they think I like to be overseas. No,
Getting
actually,
jealous, huh?
They're not jealous. They thought actually I'm this kind of person. Honestly, I was the one wanted to live in my own place. I wanted to live in Chittagong, Bangladesh, where I born brought up. But my profession took me there, honestly speaking. So I would suggest to have some real passion, love, and importantly, when you do something, please do it correctly. Do it. Spend your time in depth to earn in-depth knowledge. Do it accurately and love to do it. Don't only think career. Do some giant good work. It will take you there. It will take you there, certainly. And more importantly, try to have a good friend of the discipline. Very important. You should have some people who will support you. This discipline, without support, is very hard to reach in the goal. You need some guidance, mentor, proper mentor. Some people is good, some people is mentoring no good. So you have to have the right one who is good for you.
Right. Well, Dr. Alam, thank you so much for being our first international guest who's working outside of North America. I'm very happy and thrilled to have you here. And I really hope that you and I can keep in touch, and the listeners learned a lot about what's happening in Bangladesh and the region, because we need to learn from the rest of the world. We can't just be kind of, as we call it, navel gazers. We really need to spread our wings and look abroad. So thank you so much, Dr. Alam, for taking the time to talk with us today. Take care.
It's a great honor. Thank you, Mr. Bin, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk about my research and things. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. There we have it, folks. That was a wonderful interview with Dr. Edris Alam. And I'm really thrilled because he was our first international guest outside of North America here. So he is very knowledgeable about his subject matter, is he not? Yes. So thanks again to Dr. Alam for being a guest here at the Multi-Hazards Podcast. So a little disclaimer here that I add to each episode. This podcast is meant to be educational and does not try to offer legal, medical, or other specific advice unless otherwise noted. Also, the opinions expressed here by me, the host, or my guests don't necessarily reflect those of the organizations that we are part of. So, here as I wrap up this episode, I thank all of you, each one of you, for tuning in. Stay safe out there and stay tuned for more. This is Vin Nelson wishing you the best on your journey of surviving and thriving with all that life throws at you. Cheers to you all. Peace out.